series of undocking burns, and we'll see physical separation of the Dragon from the International Space Station. As mentioned earlier, the relocation will free up Harmony's forward port for the docking of another commercial spacecraft built to carry humans, Boeing's CST-100 Starliner. Here's the new docking location for today, and here's, of course, the Starliner that will be coming up on July 30th and arrive at the station about 24 hours later, launching on July 30th.
First set of hooks open and nominal.
Good news there. Call out the first set of hooks is open, and we're now going to listen in for the call of opening the second set of hooks.
As those second set of hooks continue to drive, it will be very shortly after they are finished driving and we have successful confirmation that those last set of hooks are done from unlatching. Very shortly after that, we should be seeing physical separation from this camera view. That docking target you're seeing right at the crosshairs, the center of the camera view from the Dragon itself. We'll start to see that view getting a little bit smaller as Dragon itself backs straight away to the 60-meter mark.
In two short bursts to break the stiction between it and the docking port and physically separate from station. So we'll be able to see that here just momentarily.
All hooks open and nominal. Okay, we see separation.
Bueno, gente, ¿cómo
Separation
están?
is confirmed.
Acá estoy, como siempre, llegando justo, pero bueno. Esta es la separación de la Dragon.
Okay, as you can see there, undocking confirmed of Crew Dragon Endeavour from the International Space Station on time at 5:45 a.m. Central, 10:45 GMT, while station and Dragon flew approximately 263 miles over the South Pacific, flying west of Chile.
On the big loop, Dragon separation visually confirmed.
Copy. Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Relocate burn 0 complete. Endeavour copies.
Also heard the call out there that the relocate burn was complete. That was the final of the 3 burns of the service section Dracos performed. That final relocate lasted about 21 seconds.
Dragon already about 50 meters away from the station. It's heading to a 60-meter hold point before transferring to the new docking axis.
Dragon is working to acquire LiDAR tracking, which will be used by Dragon to autonomously execute this relocation maneuver. Like Gary mentioned before, we expect it to back straight away to about 60 meters.
Station on the big loop. ISS thrusters are enabled.
Copy.
You're getting a live view from the International Space Station.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. We've confirmed good position within the corridor, and we'll be commanding go to relocate shortly. You are go to raise your visors.
Okay, we're looking good in the corridor. Good to raise our visors.
What you're hearing now is all the teams in Mission Control Houston, and from this view here, Mission Control in Hoff, agreeing to transfer from one docking axis to the other. Dragon now holding in front of its original docking axis, undocking from the forward Harmony port, right on time, 5:45 a.m. Central Time. It's a little bit further than 60 meters, 95 meters, and holding, but from here, the teams are looking to make sure that everything's good before initiating that transfer maneuver. It'll move really from where it is now in front of the International Space Station to directly above it. That'll be the new docking axis, right in front of the IDA-3 docking port. From the external cameras of the International Space Station, you can see there in the distance the Crew Dragon holding right now at about 87 meters from its original docking port. Teams are analyzing the making sure that Crew Dragon itself is ready for the next maneuver to transition to the new docking axis. Right now you can see it directly in front of its original docking port. It'll swing upwards from this view to the new docking port that's on the zenith or space-facing side of the International Space Station's Harmony port. Now getting views from the International Space Station Flight Control Room. We'll be losing the views from the outside of the station periodically throughout today's coverage. And during the transition maneuver, we'll briefly describe why this is occurring. It is in part due to the location of Dragon relative to the Tejas satellites. But as we are looking at the live view from the International Space Station Flight Control Room, we're watching the Dragon itself move inward toward that 60-meter hold point. It went out commanded hold at 60 meters and moved out to about 95 meters. Now it's about 80 meters from the International Space Station. Teams are just analyzing, making sure the Dragon's in the right place and everything is configured, getting ready to execute that transition maneuver from one docking axis to the other.
In case you Dragon is about 70 meters away from station, 10 meters to go back to the
Teams here in the International Space Station flight monitoring Crew Dragon as it makes its way back to the 60-meter hold point, now at about just under 62 meters. We'll be arriving there shortly. They're also configuring the International Space Station itself. It has a series of steps through the relocation maneuver. The solar arrays themselves are feathered and locked in a position throughout the duration of today's maneuver, and attitude control has since been handed over to the Russian segment. From here, the ADCO, the Attitude Determination and Control Officer, has been given the go to transition to the docking attitude. This will hold International Space Station in the position ready for when the Crew Dragon Endeavour makes its relocation maneuver to the new docking axis. Station will be in the predicted attitude position, ready to receive Dragon. And we receive confirmation. Dragon has arrived at the 60-meter hold point. For those just joining, you're looking at a live view of Mission Control in Hawthorne. Teams there are working with teams here in Mission Control Houston, monitoring the port relocation maneuver of Crew Dragon Endeavour. Crew Dragon undocked on time, 5:45 a.m. Central Time, moving out with a commanded hold at 60 meters as it drifted out to about 95 meters and slowly made its way back to the 60-meter hold point. Now it's holding steady. We're just waiting for that go to initiate the transition maneuver from the original docking axis, where Crew Dragon has been calling its home for the past 89 days at the Forward Harmony port. It'll be transitioning to the zenith or space-facing port, where it will that will be its new home until it departs in the fall.
SpaceX Endeavour on the big loop. You see we're holding.
SpaceX copies and confirms we are holding at the 60-meter hold point. We are awaiting ground go to begin the axis maneuver. We'll come back on board when ready.
Endeavour copies.
As Gary mentioned, this Crew 2 capsule will remain at this port until it returns to Earth in a couple of months. But before it does that, it'll get a visit from the new Crew 3 crew, as they will be using the IDA 2 port where this Dragon capsule just left. And similarly to how we had a full house with two Crew Dragons on station at once, both Crew 1 and Crew 2, we will have a similar...
On the big loop, ground will be commanding relocate transfer to begin the axis transition. As a reminder, the soft capture ring deploy will begin in relocate to axis.
Endeavour copies and we're ready.
And Station Houston on the big loop, monitor per block Delta, step 3, and 1.602 Dragon departure monitoring.
Copy and work.
Once again, you're getting a live view from the flight control rooms in Mission Control Hawthorne. Teams there working with teams here in Mission Control Houston, monitoring today's operation. We had a good commanded hold at 60 meters in front of the new docking axis, and teams initiated the relocation maneuver. Now we are on our way, the Crew Dragon itself, from the original docking axis to the new docking axis in front of the Zenith port. Teams here in Mission Control Houston have confirmed that motion from the original docking axis to the new one is looking good. The Crew Dragon on the expected trajectory to arrive at its new docking axis. In the meantime, the International Space Station itself has been configured for its docking attitude, making sure that when Crew Dragon arrives on the new docking axis, the station will be in the predicted position. Everything's looking good as we transition from one docking axis to the other. Now, you may have noticed we've been showing a lot of views, live views, from the various control rooms and the flight control teams that are supporting today's maneuver from the ground. And it's expected that we'll have a gap in some live video from the International Space Station during the port relocation. Now, this is all due to the equipment locations and orbital mechanics of some of the communication equipment that's on board the International Space Station. One of our Cronus flight controllers, who manages cameras and communications with the space station, Chris White, recently gave a good explainer on Twitter as to why we are seeing just the views here and not the views from space. Now, that live video comes down thanks to our KU band, which is a high data rate communications from space to ground. The antenna that provides that is points to one of the TDRS, or tracking and data relay satellites, which then relays the signal back to the ground. That antenna happens to be located on the top part of the section, top part of the station, where it can most effectively point at the different TDRS satellites, which orbit about a little bit more than 22,000 miles above the Earth. To give you some perspective, the International Space Station is currently orbiting at roughly 250 miles. Now, those satellites provide communication to multiple spacecraft and satellites, including familiar ones like the Space Station Dragon, Hubble Space Telescope. Now, for today's operation, the TDRS we're in range of would be behind the Dragon during his approach. So that means any signal that the antenna would send would reflect off of Dragon, which could potentially damage the antenna's tracking sensors. So to prevent this, the Cronus flight controller here in Mission Control Houston activates what's called a mask, which basically prevents the antenna from pointing at a specific area of the sky. Any spacecraft that approaches zenith or the space-facing side port of Harmony, which is part of the maneuver today, has a large area off limits to the antenna for the antenna to point. And if the antenna can't point at the closest TDRS satellite, then we can't send the video signal. Here's a view from a cargo Dragon undocking. From this position, you can see the cargo left. That dish that you see there on the right is a space to ground. May be able to see some live views as Dragon makes its final approach from the 20-meter hold point at waypoint 2 down to the docking axis, but otherwise we're going to play it safe and mask off the area as Dragon makes its position right in between the dish there that you see on the right, the space-to-ground antenna, and the tracking and data relay satellites in geosynchronous orbit more than 22,000 miles from Earth.
for those just joining, Crew Dragon has undocked from the International Space Station and is currently making its way to the midpoint in this relocation maneuver. It will stop and hold once it's 60 meters directly above the Node 2 zenith port and prepare for final approach. Which is just 20 meters away from station. Once it's there, Crew Dragon will hold one final time for teams on the ground and the astronauts aboard Dragon to do a final check before docking. There aren't any strict requirements to complete docking during a day or night pass, but there's always the chance that this could hold, this hold could continue until lighting conditions on the docking port are ideal. Once ready, Dragon will begin its final approach back to the space station. And we're just about 1 minute until Dragon reaches that midpoint.
Throughout this maneuver to the new docking access, this transition path, the Dragon itself has been holding roughly 60 meters away from the station as it transitions from one docking port to the other. As we near the midpoint, that'll be the halfway point until we reach the new docking access. In the meantime, as we make this transition, please send in some questions using the hashtag AskNASA. We'll do our best to answer them here as we continue to cover the port relocation maneuver and Crew 2 making their way to the new docking access.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Midpoint has been reached.
Never copies.
And you heard that confirmation, the Crew Dragon Endeavour making a successful maneuver from the original docking axis after undocking on time, 5:45 a.m. Central Time, moving out to about 95 meters, then back to 60 meters, initiating the transition maneuver and holding at 60 meters from the original docking axis to the midpoint. Now it's now it's making a transition from that midpoint to the new docking axis. It'll take just about another 9 minutes. In the meantime, we'll cover the crew that's currently on board Crew Dragon Endeavour. First is Dragon Commander Shane Kimbrough. It is his third trip to space. He was born in Killeen, Texas, and raised in Atlanta, and was selected as an astronaut in 2004. Kimbrough is a retired U.S. Army colonel and holds degrees in aerospace engineering and operations research. He first launched aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour on STS-126, then aboard a Russian Soyuz spacecraft for Expedition 49 and 50. Kimbrough is the spacecraft commander for the Crew 2 flight and is a flight engineer for Expeditions 65 and 66 on station. In addition to the usual complement of science and maintenance work for our astronauts, he completed 3 spacewalks earlier this summer with Thomas Pesquet to install the first in a series of new solar arrays on the station, bringing his total spacewalk count to 9.
This mission marks pilot Megan MacArthur's second trip to space, but her first one to the space station. She was born in Honolulu, but considers California her home state. NASA selected MacArthur as an astronaut in 2000. She holds degrees in aerospace engineering and oceanography. MacArthur served as mission specialist aboard Space Shuttle Atlantis on STS-125, the final servicing mission of the Hubble Space Telescope in 2009. She operated the shuttle's robotic arm over the course of 12 days and 21 hours, capturing the telescope and maneuvering crew members throughout the 5 spacewalks to upgrade Hubble's science instruments, along with removal and replacement of other components to lengthen the telescope's life. MacArthur is Crew Dragon Endeavour's pilot for the Crew 2 mission and is serving as a flight engineer conducting science and maintenance for Expeditions 65 and 66 aboard the station.
Mission Specialist Aki Hoshide is currently on his 3rd trip to space. Born in Tokyo, Hoshide was selected as an astronaut in 1999 by the National Space Development Agency of Japan, known today as Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA. Hoshide earned degrees in aerospace engineering and mechanical engineering. He flew on STS-124 aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery to deliver and install Japan's science laboratory Kibo. He also flew aboard the Russian Soyuz on Expeditions 32 and 33 for a 124-day visit to the International Space Station. In 2014, he also served as commander of the 18th NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operation, an underwater expedition at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Aquarius habitat off of Florida's Key Largo coast. He now serves as the commander for the International Space Station for Expedition 65 and as a mission specialist for the Crew 2 flight.
Crew 2 is mission specialist Thomas Pesquet's 2nd trip to space. Born in Rouen, France, Pesquet was selected by ESA as an astronaut in 2009. He has a degree in spacecraft design and control and more than 2,300 flight hours as a commercial airline pilot. Pesquet first flew to space on the Soyuz as a flight engineer for Expeditions 50 and 51. In that time, he worked on more than 50 experiments and performed 2 spacewalks to maintain the space station. He has logged 197 days in space. Pesquet is the first European to fly in a Crew Dragon and the first to launch from America in more than a decade. He's currently a flight engineer for Expedition 65 and will take over the role of station commander later this fall before returning to Earth with the rest of the Crew 2 astronauts.
Docking access and past the midway point. We're now in the final stretch of the transition from the midway point, which is the halfway marker between the original docking access and the new one. And Dragon, you see docking access on the space-facing side, really pointing right out towards the space. That's where the International Docking Adapter 3 is located. We're in the final stretch. And now starting to get some views from the International Space Station of Crew Dragon Endeavour in the final stretch of this transition from the midway point to the new docking axis. In the final moments here, we're getting some questions using the hashtag AskNASA. Please keep sending them in as we continue our coverage of Crew Dragon's maneuver to a new port. This first question comes in asking about the views that we're seeing. How come people in Space Station Mission Control Room are able to maintain live views of the International Space Station, but we can't? The answer is that the folks that you're seeing here in Mission Control Houston are looking at the same views that we are. So now we are getting the views from the outside of the International Space Station using some of the external cameras. You see here's a shot from the back of the room. We're now getting these views. Now, the space-to-ground communications, the reason we're able to get these views is due to a communications antenna that's located on the outside of the International Space Station, pointing towards the tracking and data relay satellites. Now, for a large portion of today's maneuver, some of those shots are going to be masked. The communication path between the station, which is 250 miles, and the geosynchronous tracking and data relay satellites, which are more than 22,000 miles from Earth. We mask off those areas to prevent any damage to the communication antennas as they're sending high data rate radio frequency signals. where Dragon really is in between that communication path. So we wouldn't want the high data rate communication signals to bounce off of the Dragon back to the antenna and possibly affect some of the auto track sensors that are on the outside of the station. So the views that you're seeing are going to be periodic. We may lose them as we make our way to the new docking axis. But right now we're in the home stretch getting some good views. The Cronus, the mission controller here in Mission Control Houston, is overexposing the image of the Dragon. You see it sort of very brightly coming into our view now. When the Cronus overexposes the image and increases the aperture of the station's cameras, you can start to see some of the Draco engines firing the different plumes. You'll see that coming out of Dragon as it makes its transition. That helps to stabilize the Dragon as it makes its way from one docking axis to the other. Overexposing now.
If you look carefully at your screen, you can see the Crew Dragon capsule there firing its some actuation thrusters there to align for this autonomous procedure.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Dragon has arrived at the 60-meter hold point on zenith, and Dragon is configured for docking. Confirm crew readiness for approach 1.
Endeavor copies all. Crew is ready for approach 1.
Getting more live views from the International Space Station Flight Control Room. You heard confirmation that Dragon has arrived at its new docking axis, holding at 60 meters steady. The Approach 1 maneuver will be executed here shortly and will move Dragon in from the 60-meter hold point down to waypoint 2, a 20-meter hold point. From there, it'll hold once again, and teams in both Mission Control Houston Hawthorne will conduct a go-no-go readiness poll and make sure that we are good to proceed from waypoint 2 down to docking with the new port.
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Ground is now go to continue approach, and we will be to approach to waypoint 2.
Endeavor copies. We are ready for the resume.
And Station Houston on the big loop. Approach is resuming to waypoint 2. Monitor per step 2 and 1.104. Crew Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Good work, thanks.
As we mentioned before, the port relocation maneuvers are completely autonomous when it comes to the Dragon spacecraft. Although the all 4 crew members are suited up and strapped into their seats within the Crew Dragon capsule. They are not commanding the vehicle from inside. All those commands are being sent from ground, and the crew inside the capsule is monitoring, as we heard call out there on the loops.
And we heard that confirmation. Dragon is moving from the 60-meter hold point now at about 46 meters and closing into the 20-meter hold. Again, that waypoint 2 will be a hold command. Teams will conduct a readiness review, making sure everything is good before proceeding in for a docking. In the meantime, we're getting live views from the International Space Station. We've described the masking that's required as Dragon now is really in between the space-to-ground antenna and the tracking and data relay satellites, so our views of the docking maneuver will be pretty sparse throughout the remainder of today's coverage. We may get a little sneak peek of Dragon actually making contact with the new International Docking Adapter. Now 34 meters and closing. In the meantime, keep sending in your questions using the hashtag AskNASA. We'll try to answer as many as we can as we continue our coverage today. This next one is about why we are conducting the maneuver. Why can the Boeing Starliner not dock in place where Endeavour was originally located? So why is this maneuver required? Well, Boeing's CST-100 Starliner's flight software has been certified for docking to the forward port on Harmony for its flight test to the International Space Station. The forward port offers a less complex approach and presents better lighting conditions without the Earth in view of navigation and tracking sensors. Utilizing that forward port on these initial test flights puts the safety of the crew and the 2 vehicles first. Starliner will be able to dock to both ports and have the ability to perform port relocation maneuvers by the Starliner 1 mission. This is similar to the approach taken during the first dockings of Crew Dragon during its first test flights to the station.
Hey, Megan, just for your awareness, we are waiting on ground.
Houston Station on the big loop. Procedure review complete, and the ISS crew is ready for docking.
Copy.
And we will be anticipating holding at waypoint 2 momentarily.
For copies, we will expect to hold at waypoint 2.
As you're getting live views of the International Space Station Flight Control Room, we have confirmation that the Crew Dragon is holding at waypoint 2, just 20 meters away from the International Space Station. This is the final hold point before it makes its way from this final hold point, 20 meters away, to contact and capture with its new docking port. As we wait here and the teams assess the go readiness for proceeding in with a docking, we already heard that go from the crew. Keep sending in your questions using the hashtag AskNASA. This next one comes from Alex, who's asking, why does the Crew Dragon crew need to be on board during the dock itself? A good question. Why not just let the Dragon autonomously move from one port to the other? The idea is that in the event of a contingency, if anything were to happen during the port relocation maneuver, say it couldn't undock, or if there was anything that were to happen to the Crew Dragon itself, that the 4 members of the crew have the available seats in the, we'll call it an escape pod, that gets them down to Earth. At all times on board the International Space Station, there needs to be enough seats in the visiting vehicles to provide transportation, a safe transportation from the International Space Station back down to Earth. So if anything were to happen for the Crew Dragon, all 4 would have enough seats to return back to the Earth safely.
So although unfortunately we don't have video of Crew Dragon, all 4 crew members, like we mentioned before, are suited up and buckled into their seats inside the Crew Dragon capsule during this port relocation maneuver. They are now in the final half of this maneuver. We're going to be, the final step will be the final approach, which will take about 4 minutes. We'll hear a call out for CHOP, which stands for Crew Hands Off Point. And this occurs when the spacecraft is about 2 meters away from the docking port and means that any aborts need to be initiated by Dragon's flight computer and after that point rather than by the crew.
And that call will happen at about the 2-meter point. It'll just be a matter of seconds, really, from 2 meters until it makes contact and capture with the International Space Station. That initial capture time will report out as a soft capture. The soft capture ring itself will retract, pulling the Dragon in to begin a hard mating sequence with the International Docking Adapter. That aligns the hooks very nicely, and they'll engage just like we saw at the beginning of today's coverage, all 12 hooks, releasing 6 at a time. We'll see the opposite during the docking sequence. These 12 hooks will engage to hard mate the Crew Dragon to the International Docking Adapter 6 at a time.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Ground is go for final approach and will be commanding resume shortly. Please confirm crew readiness for final approach and visors are down.
Go for final approach, visors are down. Can you confirm the docking light is on?
SpaceX copies, crew is go. We can confirm that the docking light is on. Additionally, as a reminder, once Dragon is inside the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are no longer permitted.
Never copies off.
And Station Houston on the big loop. Monitor per steps 3 and 4 and 1.104 Crew Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
In work, thanks.
And we're getting views from the external cameras of the International Space Station. You can see the forward end of the Dragon right there, that soft capture ring fully extended. And the sequence for moving in from waypoint 2 to docking has begun. We're now inside 20 meters from the International Space Station. This sequence, as we move in, will take about 4 minutes until we get a contact and capture of the Dragon, bringing our 4 crew members inside Dragon back inside the International Space Station. Some of the calls you heard during this approach, we of course have Mark Van High inside the International Space Station monitoring the approach. Of course, with the 4 crew members of the Dragon itself inside watching the sequences here. The big loop you're hearing is the communications channel of the space-to-ground communications as well as Dragon-to-ground. So all the communications you're hearing is being heard by the ground teams here in Mission Control Houston as well as Mission Control in Hawthorne, and of course the crew inside Dragon as well as inside the International Space Station. We're now 15 meters in closing.
Love to see this view of the Crew Dragon approaching the space station autonomously, driving itself. If you recall from the previous version of the previous version of Dragon, the cargo capsules, they dock to the station actually not by docking but by berthing, which essentially required the robotic Canadarm to grapple the spacecraft and bring it to the station manually. So to see Crew Dragon, this upgraded version, flying on its own without any assistance and able to dock autonomously with the space station is an awesome capability that's just so great to see with our eyes here.
Meters.
Copy, 10 meters.
At 10 meters away from this vantage point, you see the Earth there in the lower left corner. We're now flying 262 statute miles over India.
No, se viene el acoplamiento. Ahora sí, disculpen que no estaba hablando.
Great shot of the forward.
5 meters.
Great shot of the forward end of Crew Dragon there.
Bien.
Located near the top
Ahora
are
sí.
the forward Draco
Estoy
thrusters,
ya
which of
pronto
course
para
are not being utilized
ver el
for today's
acoplamiento.
maneuvers. All the maneuvers are managed with the service section Draco thrusters.
Crew hands
Bien.
off point, 3 meters in closing.
Está muy cerca ya la nave.
Copy, hands off.
Listo, entró al docking port. Me parece que la transmisión está yendo un poco atrasado.
Copy, soft capture confirmed.
Sí. Nos perdimos ese momento. Pero no se preocupen de que ahora lo voy a retomar.
And with that, we have a
No se
confirmed
preocupen de que ahora hay
contact and
repetición
soft capture.
de ese
Dragon
momento.
and station. We're flying 262 miles over Western China. That docking time, 6:35 a.m. Central Time, 11:35 GMT.
Soft
Bien,
capture ring
ahora
retraction in progress.
voy a poner esto ahí.
Endeavor copy.
Upcoming, the teams will command Crew Dragon to begin the hard capture by commanding the hooks. Again, they will operate in 2 sets of 6, so a total of 12 hooks. Will hook
Bien,
in
ahí ya
and
tengo la
close, and
imagen.
we'll have confirmation of hard mate complete.
Bien, vamos a verlo. A verlo desde ahí. Pero me parece que nos está escuchando. Pero ahí. Y ahora cuando abren se tendría que escuchar por el directo.
Crew hands off point, 3 meters and closing.
Nice, ahora sí.
Copy, hands off.
Ahí ya tenemos el locking. Bien, y ahí se acopló y ahora
Soft capture
aseguran
confirmed.
el acoplamiento.
Copy, soft capture confirmed.
O sea que fue un cambio de docking port exitoso.
Placed for transportation to station,
Ahí estamos en la transmisión
where they
directa.
were then
And with
removed.
that, we have a confirmed contact and soft capture. Dragon and station were
now permanent
flying
homes.
262
The
miles
trunk
over
will
West
be
Le
jettisoned
dejo ahí.
home, and
whenever
allow
it's
the
time
heat
for
shield Crew Dragon to return home, and allow the heat shield at the bottom of the pressurized section to be exposed, and allow the Crew Dragon to splash down safely in the Atlantic Ocean.
Dragon SpaceX ring retraction is complete. Docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
Endeavor copy.
With that side view of Crew Dragon, we have a great shot of the service section Draco thrusters that I mentioned earlier. They're the portholes there on the side of Crew Dragon. That is where the thrust comes out from the Draco thrusters, and those are the service section thrusters that we utilized for relocation maneuvering.
Station Endeavor on the big loop. MCS is configured, proceeding with hook driving.
Taking copies.
Double copies.
With the soft capture ring retracted before the hard mate sequence can begin, again, there are 12 hooks that are going to secure Crew Dragon Endeavour to the International Docking Adapter. Teams here in Mission Control Houston configured the International Space Station to be on control moment gyro attitude control. Now that it's switched over to control moment gyros, they can begin the hard docking sequence with the driving of the first set of hooks. They're going to drive 6 at a time to make 12 hooks total, securing the Dragon Endeavour to the International Docking Adapter. And with that, we have confirmation that the first set of hooks are driving.
Yo no los voy a poder estar acompañando hoy en el directo de lanzamiento del Proton M. De que es un lanzamiento muy esperado, un lanzamiento importante de un módulo a la Estación Espacial Internacional, pero no voy a poder porque no llego a tiempo a mi casa y bueno, si no llego a tiempo no lo puedo emitir en directo. Así que bueno, los espero otro día para otro lanzamiento o novedades en el espacio. Es en 3 horas el lanzamiento del Proton M, pero yo no voy a poder estar. Ya lo digo. Así que bueno, mil disculpas, gente. Bueno, muchas gracias a todos esos que estuvieron ahí en el directo.
As the first set of hooks continue to drive, there are again 2 sets of hooks, 6 each, to hard mate the Crew Dragon Endeavour to the International Space Station. A recap of today's activities. Early this morning, the crew woke up at about 1 o'clock a.m. Central Time, getting ready for their day, eating some food, brushing their teeth, and getting suited up to get ready to go inside Dragon and begin today's port relocation maneuver. After they ingress the Dragon and close the hatches, Dragon side and International Space Station, NASA astronaut Mark Van High closed the hatch on the station side, the APAS hatch, after affixing a docking target. The crew was suited up, performed leak checks in their SpaceX spacesuits, and got ready for an undocking of the original docking ports, where Crew Dragon Endeavour was just about an hour ago. The Crew Dragon Endeavour and the 4 crew members inside, Shane Kimbrough, Megan MacArthur, Thomas Pesquet, and Aki Hoshide, undocked at 5:45 a.m. Central Time about an hour ago and made the transition to the new docking port, making contact and capture with the port that you're seeing here, the Zenith or space-facing port, at 5:35 a.m. Central Time, completing the 50-minute maneuver from the original docking port to its new home, making room on the forward harmony part for the Boeing CST-100 Starliner to dock here in next week. July 30th is when it's set to launch, making contact and capture with the International Space Station set 24 hours later.
At this point in time, the first set of hooks have closed and the second set are driving. Again, there are 12 in total and they operate in 2 sets of 6. And we're waiting for confirmation of the closure of the second set of hooks.
Endeavour, SpaceX on the big loop. Hard capture is complete. You are go to raise your visors.
Copy, hard capture complete, visors up.
And with that, we have confirmation that the second set of hooks has finished driving. So all 12 hooks now securing the Crew Dragon Endeavour to the International Space Station. Teams here will now undergo a series of steps to pressurize the vestibule in between the Dragon hatch and the station hatch, just like we saw earlier during today's coverage with the depressurization of the original docking port. We'll see everything in reverse to allow the pressurization to equalize, making sure everything is good before opening up the hatch,
Bueno,
and letting
gente,
our 4
yo
crew
me
members
voy a estar
inside Dragon back
desconectando.
inside the International Space Station.
Voy a estar apagando el directo. Ya ha estado el acoplamiento, hemos visto la maniobra completa. Llegué justo.
So now that
Pero bueno,
the
muchas
Crew
gracias
2
a todos los
NASA
que estuvieron
astronauts
ahí
Shane Kimbrough and
atrás
Megan MacArthur, European Space Agency
del
astronaut
directo
Thomas Pesquet,
mirando,
and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency
atrás
astronaut
de
Aki
su
Hoshide have
pantalla. Y
redocked with
bueno,
the International Space Station.
y nosotros
We're
nos
going to wrap
encontramos en
our
el
live
siguiente
coverage
directo. Recuerda que
of
hoy
Dragon's
no voy a
second
poder
port
estar para
relocation maneuver.
el
The
lanzamiento
crew
del
will
Proton
take some
M,
time now to get
que
out
es
of
un
their
lanzamiento
suits and begin the
importante.
process of opening up the hatches in about
No voy a
2
poder estar,
hours.
pero
As mentioned
seguro
earlier,
suba
the
alguna
relocation has
que
freed
otra
up
noticia
Harmony's
a Twitter.
forward port
Así
for
que
the
vayan a
docking
seguirme,
of
está el
another
link en la
commercial
descripción.
spacecraft built to carry humans, Boeing's CST-100
Nos
Starliner.
vemos, gente.
This will be
Adiós.
Boeing's second test flight of Starliner without crew as they seek to put the spacecraft through all the phases